Robby, what's on your radar?
The Washington Post thinks it's time for a reckoning. That's according to an editorial the newspaper published over the weekend titled, fittingly, "The Hunter Biden Story is an Opportunity for a Reckoning." There's no question that that's true, but the entity that needs a reckoning is the mainstream media, Democratic politicians, and their allies in big tech, because these were the groups and individuals who desperately suppressed a legitimate news article that it turns out was true. Most of our viewers are less easily duped than the mainstream media, so I'm not telling you anything you don't already know when I remind you how poorly the MSM behaved after the publication of the New York Post story just before the 2020 election, which alleged the Post had obtained a laptop belonging to Hunter Biden that hinted at all sorts of lobbying, influence peddling, and possible corruption. Russian disinformation, that's what the mainstream media claimed it was. That's what Joe Biden claimed it was, citing intelligence officials serving as Democratic Party apparatchiks. And based on those claims, social media went ballistic. Twitter blocked users for sharing the story entirely. Facebook's algorithm suppressed it. Ostensibly, the social media companies were concerned that the information had been obtained illegitimately through hacking or was itself misinformation. We now know that both those claims are false. The information had not been hacked, and it was real. Recently, and belatedly I should note, the New York Times finally confirmed what most everyone with even a shred of independent thinking has already realized. The laptop is real, the story was real, Hunter Biden really was part of many quasi-ethical, if not unethical, influence campaigns. One might expect this would prompt some reflection on the media's part. Well, we're getting that from the Washington Post, sort of. The weekend editorial makes notes of all the MSM's misdeeds and really lays into social media. The Post laments that, quote, Twitter blocked the story altogether, pointing to a policy against hacked materials, and suspended the New York Post account for sharing it. Facebook downranked the story in the algorithms that govern users' newsfeed and for fear that it was based on misinformation. Now the Washington Post and the New York Times have vouched for many of the relevant communications. So that's what the editorial says. It continues noting that, quote, this series of events has prompted allegations of a cover-up, or at best a double standard, in the treatment of conservative and liberal politicians by mainstream media and social media sites, end quote. Now we're getting somewhere, right? So here's the moment the mainstream media admits they were at fault, admits they were duped. Well, not quite. Here's the next line. Quote, yet there was reason in this case for reluctance on the part of the publications and the platforms alike. And what was that reason? Quote, both had been the unwitting tools of a Russian influence campaign in 2016, and it was only prudent to suspect a similar plot lay behind the mysterious appearance of a computer stuffed with juicy documents and conveniently handed over to President Donald Trump's toxic personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani, end quote. So that's where we're at. The media's default is to assume that anything damaging to Democrats is the handiwork of a Russian influence campaign. Note that we're not even talking about whether theoretically Russian-sourced information is true or not. The hacking of Clinton advisor John Podesta during the 2016 campaign, for instance, was indeed done by Russia in all likelihood, but the information we learned was true. It was real. There's this very weird and very wrong tendency in the mainstream media nowadays to treat everything as wrong or false if Russia is the origin of it. But that's just sheer laziness. It can be part of a Russian influence campaign and also be correct. After all, much good opposition research is correct. My point is the fact that Russia tried to influence the outcome of a U.S. presidential election does not tell us anything for certain about the quality of the information with which they are trying to influence us. It's not like we can just say, oh, this was Russia, ignore it, as much as the Democratic Party and the U.S. intelligence community would clearly like us to do. One might have expected a Washington Post editorial titled, "The Hunter Biden Story is an Opportunity for Reckoning," to acknowledge that and apologize. It doesn't even come close to doing that, however. Their concluding line is this: the lesson learned from 2020 may well be that there's also a danger of suppressing accurate and relevant stories. May well be? Yeah, I think that might be a problem. Glenn Greenwald says it best, noting, they think a story is only confirmed once the New York Times and Washington Post say so, lol. The evidence of the archive's authenticity was overwhelming from the start. Many of us staked our careers on it. Meanwhile, Biden Chief of Staff Ron Klain responded to a question about Hunter Biden from George Stephanopoulos this weekend. Let's watch.
George, the president is confident that his family did the right thing. But again, I want to just be really clear. These are actions by Hunter and his brother. They're private matters. They don't involve the president. And they certainly are something that no one at the White House is involved in.
Maybe so. I don't know that I would trust this media to report that, even if it was the case. or maybe they'll wait years and then decide it's okay to discuss it. Anyway, this was a great opportunity for a mea culpa from the Washington Post. That's what I thought I was getting when I read the headline. That's actually how I saw it described by people on social media. And then I'm reading it and I'm like, okay, justification for what they did, justification for what they did, justification for what they did, and then maybe, perhaps, information shouldn't be suppressed. That's all you come up with? Jesus.
Right.
So it was disappointing.
Right, and so it goes back to 2016. If you want to get yourself into the heads of these folks, like they genuinely felt like, well, they did not want Trump to win in 2016, and
right.
they felt that their coverage of Hillary's emails contributed to Trump winning, and that was their reckoning. Like they felt like they had done something wrong because Trump had won, which is the wrong place for the media to position itself in the relationship between the voters.
Hillary Clinton had done something wrong. That's why Trump won.
Right, and so there was a lot of reporting on what was found inside those emails. There was a lot, but a lot of it was newsworthy, and some of it, for instance, was damaging, like the excerpts to her Goldman Sachs speeches. Right. She had multiple ways around that. She could have not given $700,000 worth of speeches to Goldman Sachs knowing that she was about to run for president, or she could have released the transcript of those speeches in full after she gave. Like, some people do that. It's like, hey, I'm going to take this $700,000 because it's there for me, but here's exactly what I said. She did both. She took the money and then wasn't transparent about what she said. So then, boom, it comes out like 2 weeks before the election and it makes big news. And so then the media went through this reckoning about how they would handle a situation like this if it were to arise again, and then they think they see it coming again. To me, the real solution here for the media is to say it doesn't actually matter if the material was hacked or leaked. As long as it's true, then the media should report on it. If the federal government wants to go after leakers, they're within their rights there. If people want to change the laws around whistleblowers, people can lobby to have those laws changed. But those are two separate things. And the Intercept Brazil, which Glenn founded, produced an extraordinary amount of incredible reporting on Bolsonaro and corruption around him, based on documents that it was eventually revealed were hacked. A group of hackers had suspected that there was immense corruption among these judges and prosecutors who had put Lula in prison, and they went and got those documents and then leaked them to the press. Doesn't make them untrue.
Right.
And it's good that information became public because wrongs were righted, and he was freed from prison.
Right.
So the media should just back off of this.
You can't just say, well, that's Russian, so ignore it.
Right.
Russian is not synonymous with false.
Right.
It's just synonymous with
might
Russian.
Be.
It could be false.
You check it out.
Just
like
as
any other
American
tip.
information,
Right.
any information could be false.
Right.
Check it out, but just saying, well, Russian doesn't get you there, and the media has to stop doing it. And this was unfortunately another example of them doing it in what should have been their apology for doing it last time.
Yeah. All right, we'll have more Rising right after this.
Yes, we will.